A lot of people in the business, however you want to frame it, look at finance as like those are just bean counters. And my answer is like, then you haven't had a good finance team.
Welcome everybody to another For the Love of Finance. This series is focused on giving you practical insights to help you decode and increase your value in your career. Today, I'm super excited to be joined by Philip Watson, who is the CFO at Paddle. Philip, welcome to For the Love of Finance.
Hey, Chris, thanks for having me, man. Really excited to be here.
Awesome. So in this conversation, we're going to talk a little bit about the evolution of the office of the CFO. We know that the CFO office has changed. There's been technology that's come across. There's this whole pandemic that has happened that's increased the value for finance professionals. So that's where we're going to dive in here today. But before we jump into that, Philip, tell people how you got in your journey. Tell a little bit about your finance career. Tell us how you got here.
Yeah, thanks for the opportunity. So I am the CFO of a company based in London called Paddle. I've been CFO for 6 months now, so it's my first CFO. It's my first time in fintech as well, so I'm kind of drinking from multiple fire hoses here. Before I was CFO at Paddle, I did a brief stint in private equity in London at a company called HG Capital. And then before that, I was at a company that your subscribers may know called ZoomInfo, based in the States. And ZoomInfo was actually the company that sent me to London as an expat to open the London office. So prior to ZoomInfo, was at BMC Software in Texas, in business school before that. Before all that, I was an investment banker. So I've been in finance kind of since I graduated from undergrad, but either on the banking side or kind of operationally in the company for that whole time. And what Paddle does is we stand in between sellers and buyers of digital goods around the world, and we handle the checkout, the billing, and most importantly, the tax obligations for sellers. So great for small businesses that want to sell around the world but don't want to face tax complexity. You can interact with us. We'll handle that for you and your customers, and it makes it easy for you to just go focus and sell your product.
Nice. Yeah, I'm definitely familiar. Credit card and like processing over here is like a huge thing. Back in my software side, that was always one of the most important elements that we always focused on. So thanks for sharing a little bit about your background. So my first leading question is, how do you define what the modern CFO looks like? Like how does that value look inside the organization? How has it changed? What's your insights on that?
Yeah, what I think is CFOs these days need to be able to understand the full business. I think, remember, it's my first time, but I'm pretty sure there was a time not too long ago when CFOs were expected to be pretty deep in their finance and accounting vertical. Hey, you guys, you close the books, you maybe handle stuff with the shareholders. Maybe there's some other stuff y'all in finance do, but kind of stay in your lane. Now, I think it's very much that people like me who came up in the FP&A vertical and who have a real operational bent are expected to go help out all across the firm. So whether that be you help out on the go-to-market side by either providing them analytics or giving them frameworks of ways to think about how they should price to customers or engage in ROI conversations with customers, or you go interact with the marketing department and help them think through where's their highest ROI DG spend, right? Or you go give your dev leaders frameworks for are they operating efficiently or not, right? Because they're focused on producing product and maybe don't quite think about efficiency all the time. So I think now the CFO is a much broader, more operationally focused role. And I think there's a tremendous amount of overlap between CFO and COO, and actually see people kind of going back and forth between those. And that I think maybe, 15, 20 years ago, that probably happened a lot less. And now I certainly see that occurring. So in my mind, CFO role has become broader, but has certainly not become shallower. It's still just as deep as it was, but I think a CFO is expected to know, the company top to bottom, all operations, and be able to speak internally and externally to investors.
I love that. And I would just add, I think like when you think of the traditional CFO, it was that chief financial officer, right? Which that was where we stayed. That was our comfort zone. That was the finances, right? The chief financial officer. Yeah. When I think of that fresh CFO or that modern CFO of the future, it's about the chief future officer of the organization, right? It's about thinking about the future, not necessarily discounting the importance of that finance, right? That's monumental. That's most important thing for CFOs to do is know the finance side of it. But I think this evolution has started over and this transition has happened largely due to the pandemic, right? I remember being during the pandemic and I was at a high growth marketing software company. I remember that time, Philip. And this is when like the sales, the marketing, all the like revenue producing sides of the business, Philip, they were like, hey, we don't know how to navigate this. Like, this is challenge. This is uncertainty. This is something we've never seen before. And I think when those CFOs stepped up into that role to say, okay, we see a lot of this uncertainty, we see a lot of this challenge, but we're going to help navigate our businesses towards the future, right?
Yeah.
That set a whole new baseline expectation of value that businesses has expected from CFOs. It's like, hey, you helped us navigate one of the most challenging economic, social, all the hats that we wear as people times, and CFOs help navigate that. So I think that bar was set during that time, and now that's just the expectation going forward. Kind of what you talked about is you got to get outside the business. And I talked to so many different CFOs across the globe, Philip, and you'd be surprised. I asked them, tell me about your business. And they look at me and they're like, Chris, man, I do the forecast. I do the audits. Like, tell me about your business. Tell me about your customers. Tell me about something about the business. And they're just like, Chris, I know debits equal credits. And I know we just closed the month. I know we just closed the quarter, right? It's like, we got to get outside of that. So it kind of gets to the point where you mentioned the expectation of finance, not only being that valued advisor from the financial perspective, but also that valued advisor from the business looking forward perspective as well, too.
Yeah, I mean, I find the finance aspect of it to be almost table stakes now. It's really about what you said, use the word navigate a lot. So I think the navigate is the right verb there. It's like, how do you help the company see around corners? How do you help the company deal with the shocks that are going to happen? Because we know the world is a volatile place. Something bad is going to happen, right, that hits you. How, you are expected to lead the company through dealing with those shocks, either positive or negative, right? We may be able to claim to see the future. None of us can see the future, but I think we need to be able to build the frameworks to allow our companies to thrive in whatever future may end up existing. And if we can influence that, we will. But for some things that we can't influence, we need to just be ready to handle it. Is how I like to think about it. So yeah, it's a broad job. I think after the CEO, it's probably like the broadest job out there. I think my COO friends would probably fight me over that, but we could have that fight and see.
Nice. You kind of hit up on this, which leads to my next question I want to talk about: scale, right? Mm-hmm. In leading high growth organizations, even with clients that we work with, scale and how are you building that foundation built to scale, right, is one of the most important roles I think a CFO has. So my question to you is, how can CFOs think about scaling differently than traditionally? And what are some areas that you've seen success around as you built and scale finance organizations?
Yeah, I was super lucky, right? So at ZoomInfo, I joined that company when we were 38 million of ARR in 2015. And when I left in February of 2023, we were over 1.1 billion. So I was there for that whole journey, founded the FP&A team there and scaled it amongst other teams, as you say. And so I listen, what I preach to my team right now, I joined 6 months ago. Paddle had not had a CFO for the previous 2 years. So the finance department was a little shaky, we'll say, and had not had the leadership that was needed. And they didn't know what good looked like. And they didn't know what good at scale looked like. So step one, it's like, let's reset the mindset and the expectations here. So closing in, 25 days, not acceptable, right? Like, we need to be closing faster. Well, why? Well, it's not just to go faster. It's so that we can close faster. It frees up more time to go do the build things we need to do, which will then help us do everything else faster, which will then free up more time to go do more build things. And we're going to get that snowball. So my very first set of meetings with the team, I talked constantly about that snowball analogy, and I still do it. Let's build to make our organization more efficient, to then allow us to build more to make it more efficient and just get that snowball or flywheel going. So I think that's like step one, is get that mindset. Step two, like, let people know, let them know why it's important. It's not just work for work's sake. I'm not just here to grind you down and tell you to go do more and go do faster, but it's for a purpose. And that's because we are expected to scale, right? We are both VC and PE backed. So we have growth targets we need to go meet for our investors. Our employees, very fortunately, are also incented to go hit those growth targets too. But growth doesn't just happen, Chris. Growth is a result of a lot of work. And it's not just growth from the sales team. I'm not just talking about they have to go grow more. Like, we have to build the processes. We have to build the infrastructure. We have to build the systems. And we have to build the teams to go handle that growth. If you're growing 40, 50% a year, you're doubling in 2 years. Like most people in the boom times, we were doing that at ZoomInfo. We're not quite there at Paddle yet, but we have a good chance of getting back. But most people can't comprehend like doubling every 2 years or 2.5 years, whatever it may be. And so that thing that you built today, whether it be as simple as a spreadsheet or the AP system you installed or whatever else, it may not be fit for a purpose 2.5 years from now. So you have to acknowledge that, figure out that's the path you want to go down, and maybe be okay with it and know that like you build now for scale later, or you're just gonna have to rebuild later if you just need to bridge into it. So it's kind of understanding all of those dynamics. And 3, it is really about, like, if those are 1 and 2, that my third big proponent here is getting the processes in place. I actually think processes are more important than systems. There are a tremendous amount of systems out there. And like, look, I like all the vendors that come talk to me, but you can plug and play many a different system. Not all of them, I'm not going to say that, right? But there are many systems, and I won't call them out, but that are essentially the same. So like, great, you can give me system A, B, and C, we'll put it in. But it's like, have we connected them correctly? Have we built workflows around them that allow them to operate at peak efficiency? Have we built redundancies around them so that if they fail, we can still close the books and talk to our investors? Have we built, even outside of finance, processes that reach into ops or reach into sales or reach into marketing so that we can make that whole workflow, the whole order to cash workflow, easier? You increase your order to cash speed, you're just increasing your cash conversion, which is kind of what everybody wants. So, I'm not poo-pooing systems. They are super important. We just installed NetSuite on time, ahead of schedule and under budget, which is like a crazy thing to go do, but we did it. That's super important to us. But just as important are the processes my controller and his accounting team are building to enable us to close faster, to enable us to use NetSuite to its full capabilities, and to reach out into other teams to go build those order to cash workflows. So like, that's how I think about building for scale. Let people know it's important. Let them know why you're doing it. Work on processes.
Philip, man, I love how your first step, number 1, for all those finance, VPs of finance, all those leaders thinking about scale, your mindset, right? You are a fresh CFO of the future, dude. No doubt about it. You're going to crush it. And I love how you start there, because most CFOs, right, when they think about scale, it's like we start where we're comfortable. We're comfortable with the financials. So we're going to say, hey, when we think about scale, we need to go dive into the financials. Like, you took a completely different perspective. And I love it, because it's like, no. We got to go develop the right partnership mindset that we want to have as finance, right?
Yep.
And all the 3 things you talked about are what I call like the foundation pillars of like kind of how I think about scale as well too, is as we work with clients, as I look back over my 20 years in building high growth organizations, it's really 3 things: people, process, partnership. And you kind of touched on these, right? Having the right people in the right seat, doing the right level of work of processes, bringing the right level of value to the business, partnership, right? And that mindset, that importance and process, that is everything. And it goes back to, my public accounting days when I started off at Ernst & Young, when I was doing Sarbanes-Oxley 404 testing. And I remember working at a company called Eli Lilly, one of the largest pharmaceutical companies in the world. And I was sitting across from their CFO. His name was Derek Rice, really great guy. And he said, hey, one of the things I want you to know right now is, like, you may think these test of controls and these walkthroughs are not important, but you're learning the processes of a multiple billion-dollar publicly traded business.
Yeah.
And Philip, that was like eye-opening to me. And I took that love for process, because that's so important. Processes, finance is a very linear way of doing things, and where we can go in, identify processes that are either inefficient or not scalable or not adding value. And it's like, to get back to your first point, is like, is that the kind of value and mindset and importance that we want to put on the business? Do I want my team doing that if it's not creating value, it's manual and routine, and, where can I bring in technology kind of help that piece of it? So, man, your framework and guide to scale, mindset, importance of the role, and really looking at those core financial processes and how they're driving value, man, that's a great framework of scale, man, for sure.
Thanks, man. I appreciate it. Something really fun is like when you come into a place and you have people who are capable but just haven't been taught well before, kind of like what happened here at Paddle, and then you can show them the process and how they need to do it, and then you watch them get it. Like, that's really fun. And they're like, oh, you ask them now, no, I never would have thought we'd have been doing as much as we're doing now. And it's not like they're working crazy hours, right? I mean, they're working hard as they should, but they are doing better processes because they now know how to do better processes. And then now that they know this, they can get to know the next thing. And that's like really fun to see that development in your people.
absolutely. And I think where you're starting, and I love your fresh perspective that you're bringing to it, is like a lot of times CFOs, and I found myself in this recipe, right? Build, shape, scale, exit companies. That's been most of my background in high growth businesses that I've been a part of. And sometimes it's challenging for CFOs to not run the same playbooks, right? It's like you got to have a different playbook that you want to have that's different for every business. Cause like I think what you're running at Paddle, that's not the same book that you ran at Zoom Info, right? It's whole different scale. So coming in to say, hey, I know this was successful with this other company, but I need to be flexible. I need to adapt and say, this may not be the right playbook that I need to run at Paddle, and being able to be open and make that shift, right? And that's where, you get people and seeing that light bulb light with them, and they see the value that they're doing. And it kind of talks about what you mentioned earlier, is like you're setting that expectation of like, hey, you guys were okay, but here's good. Good isn't the baseline. We want to get to great, right? So now you have that employee engagement. You have them like dialed in to say, okay, we were at here, but now I know there's even further expectations and even further ways that we can improve and bring value, man. So that's awesome, man.
Yeah, to your point, like I do think you can run similar plays. I am trying to run some of the similar plays from Zinfo, but I think the really important part is to be flexible. So yes, I can't bring $1 billion business to the size Paddle is, but I can bring the things we did at my $1 billion business when we were Paddle size to Paddle. And I can hold up the things we were doing when we were $1 billion and show Paddle what really good looks like and have them work toward that, but realizing that we're not there yet. So the playbooks can be brought over, but you have to realize that they have to be amended and have to be flexible with them.
Definitely. Hey, so my next question I have for you is, we all see the challenge. We see the emergence of technology that's happened. We talked a lot about today here that increased value proposition and expectation from the business. What are some of those other challenges that you're seeing that finance teams are facing right now?
Yeah, listen, I think everybody's being required to do more with less, right? That's always. So like we are, we are a company that is maybe more focused on efficiency than we've ever been before. So I always challenge my people like, hey, do we really need that extra person? If we do, let's go get it, because I'm not here to restrain hiring. But like, is there a different thing we could be doing to get there, right? Is there a different way? So one, I think efficiency. Two, like I think the thing that you hear it all the time. Everybody hears Gen AI all the time. I still have not found exactly, at least for me, the use case for Gen AI inside of finance. I didn't find it when I was at my private equity company. I didn't have it found it here at Paddle yet. And if there is the one out there, I'd love to hear from your listeners. Like you said, do this with Gen AI, and they got it. But so I think the challenge is like we have this new series of technologies coming out. It's going to be revolutionary. I'm pretty confident in that. But like, how can we actually use that? What are the applicable use cases inside of finance, and what are the best practices there that are real and tangible, and not are just like in a PowerPoint deck that like nobody's ever implemented? And then like the third thing, just a challenge for finance is, I think you have some teams inside of finance that are super willing to get out in the business and want to go help out because they're naturally a little bit more predisposed to do that. And I think you have some other teams that are like less predisposed and actually want to go join a sales call or go like be in a meeting with another C level exec. And so I think a challenge a lot of finance teams have is like getting everybody out in the business, which is super important to me because one, that's how my teams learn about the business. Two, that's how they build relationships with their business partners. And three, that's how the business learns what value finance can bring. Because like I do think, and this, stereotypes are stereotypes for a reason, but they're fun and we can use them, right? Like I do think a lot of people in the business, however you want to frame it, look at finance as like those are just bean counters. And my answer is like, then you haven't had a good finance team, right? Because like you should be inviting us into your meetings. You should be inviting us into your decisions about how you're thinking about growing your business or operating more efficiently. You should be inviting us in when you have a question and you don't know how to answer, and we can help you think about a way to get to an answer. So if you come work for me, I very much push you out into the business, encourage you. And that can be internally with, whatever the CTO or the CMO, that can be externally hopping on a customer call. I think like that's just a general kind of challenge I've seen is like, it maybe is not the most natural inclination for everybody in finance, but I do think there's like innumerable benefits for having a model like that.
Yeah, man. I touched on this earlier, man. It means getting outside that comfort zone, right? And we're so comfortable in the quantitative sides of what we are, right? Like we're so comfortable in our financial statements, so comfortable in our modeling, so comfortable in those areas. But as you talked about earlier in the conversation, those are table stakes, right?
Yep.
That's like the base. You know, when you get computers and it says if you have to install this operating system, here's the minimum requirements that you need.
Right.
Like those are like the minimum requirements of a finance organization, right? Like
Yep.
that doesn't change the game when it comes to thinking about navigating and increasing the value, right? It's what you kind of mentioned is how we think about efficiency, how we think about being a business partner first, right? And helping accelerate the business and not just looking at the business as like, oh man, that's finance again. That's going to knock me on the head because I went over budget. It's like,
Right.
nah, man, we shouldn't be the number police, right? We
Right.
got to be inside the business and saying, how can we partner together to grow and accelerate the business? And how can we serve in that? So, yeah, man, I think that's definitely a challenge. And you kind of talked about it of that mindset shift between traditional and legacy finance versus more modern, or what I call and what I coin like the fresh CFO mindset when it comes to thinking about technology, when it comes thinking about the mindset and the value that we're shifting. So definitely agree with you on that, man. Hey, couple leading any questions. I really enjoyed this conversation. One other thing that I have is like Vertice is part of a new wave of companies that are tackling issues specifically around SaaS and cloud costs.
Mhm.
How does your organization manage this rising cost of SaaS costs, of cloud costs? Any advice you would give to anybody that's thinking about how to properly manage that SaaS spend or that cloud cost?
Yeah, I mean, step one is to measure it, right? Like you would be surprised, Chris, how many people don't end up measuring it, don't see the data, don't dedicate at least half a resource to it, whether that resource be in finance or a FinOps resource I've seen before, or even if the resource is in DevOps or in the CTO org, right? So like, I think there's a lot of people who just assume they get the bill and that's the thing, and they're never, pushing on it. They're never poking on it. Well, hey, show me the line items of the bill. Like, hey, okay, now I've got the line items. Can I bring this to my DevOps group and say, like, hey, what, do we need more reserved instances, or do we need thing X, right, to help us reduce this spend? So measuring and having somebody actually responsible for it, I think, is super important. I think the services that people like Vertice offer are also important. People, somebody that's kind of like got you on the negotiation side, right? Where maybe, maybe even me as CFO, I'm not the best negotiator with Azure or AWS because I don't know all the details, but Vertice does, right? And the companies like that. So having that as a professional negotiator, I think, can certainly be helpful. And then I think it's also like knowing your business. So like, can you tie your expenses to like things you see in the business? Hey, we had a spike in people coming to the website. Great. Did we see a spike in hosting costs? Okay, well, let's tie that together. What can we do to ameliorate those spikes? Or maybe we want that because there was a lot of people coming to buy. Or hey, did we have downtime and did we get credit for that? So being able to connect the cash outflows and connect the bills to actually what's happening in the business is the only way anybody will ever be able to go optimize those types of spend, right? Otherwise, you're just kind of at the mercy of what some faceless person on your hosting provider like is just sending you each month. That's what we try to think about it. We have a person in DevOps. He's responsible for it. I ask him questions all the time. Hey, are we getting the best rate? Have we, got the friends and family rate from our private equity partners? Have we done this? Have we done that? So I'm constantly kind of pushing him to make sure that he is all on that hosting costs all the time. So that's how I think about it.
Yeah, man, I love your point about putting a strategy and managing around it, right? SaaS and that cost is such a major element for high growth technology companies, right? And just, yep. I've always loved having a person that works directly with DevOps, engineering in that team. I love that concept of having FinOps, sales ops, rev ops, marketing ops, because now I always call them my little minions inside the business, right? When I led those teams and I had them in those different areas, I have like my black ops FP&A person in, the engineering side or the marketing or the sales side, which in a high growth software businesses are the most important areas to have that in. Sales, marketing, engineering, HR, right? You got to have those people inside of there. And now they're carrying the message, but also partnering inside the business. And your point is spot on, man. You got to have a strategy. You got to manage it. You got to really have the right people in there as well, too, to make sure you're having that line of sight, that direction, and that communication inside there, man. So I agree with you 100%. Hey, Philip, one last question that we always love to ask guests on here is, what does people greater than profit mean to you?
Yeah, listen, as you know, Chris, a software company's cost is between 60 and 75% people, right? So like software companies, they are built on people. Yes, there's a tremendous amount of technology. Yes, there's IP, but they are built on people. And I think what you've hopefully, one of the things you've heard me talk about here and many of the questions you've asked me is I've led with, you got to get the right people in place, or you have to develop them, or you have to make sure they have the right mindset, and you have to motivate them. So like that is really how I think about it. There is nothing I can go do at Paddle or could go do at ZoomInfo or anywhere else if I didn't have a solid team around me and behind me and above me and everywhere, right? All around me, 360 degrees. But what does that mean really? Like to me, that means like I want multi-tool players. So I think of somebody like my controller right now, who is vastly more than the global controller he is. Like he knows the business. He knows payments. He knows payment infrastructure. He knows accounting. He knows a little bit of FP&A. I think of somebody like my FP&A leader who knows FP&A and he knows sales ops and he knows rev ops and he knows a bunch of other things. So like having that multiple set of skills allows them to be so effective in kind of everything they touch and allows them to disperse that knowledge too. So those are the people I look for. And the people, again, we get nothing done without the right people. And to me, I'd rather have the right people than have a little bit more profit.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And as a new CFO, man, in your role that you're walking into, man, your people first mindset, it's been an absolute joy of like talking and hearing that, man, about how am I going to empower? How am I going to enable? How I'm going to equip my team to be great, right? And that's the sign of a true leader is like, I want to have great people around me with great skill sets. I want to empower them. I want to enable them with anything that they need to be successful. And then the most important thing, right, Philip, is like, get out the way and let them go be great, man. Just go be great. And I love your philosophy and mindset around that. Philip, greatly appreciate this conversation. I've learned so much. I was sitting here taking notes of some of the things. If people want to connect with you, learn more about you, connect with you, ask you some questions, where can people follow you? Where can they connect with you?
Yeah, I'm on LinkedIn, so it's Philip Watson, and it's Philip with one L, Philip. And yeah, so please reach out, get me up there. If you'd like to explore Paddle, come over to paddle.com and take a look. But would love to have anybody reach out, ask a question, just say hi. I'm back in the States multiple times a year, or if anybody's in London, happy to say hello in person too. So welcome any and all reach outs.
Awesome. Hey, Philip, thank you so much for your time on For the Love of Finance. Thank you for everybody looking through this episode. If you've enjoyed this episode, make sure to like, comment, share, leave us some notes, some things that you found valuable from the conversation. Philip, thank you so much.
Chris, thanks, man. Had a great time. I really appreciate it.